Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to councillors and members of the public who join us in the chambers or online. Before we begin this meeting, I call on Councillor Santa to give the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of all present and those watching on the webcast, we acknowledge the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of this land on which we meet. We pay our respects to the ancestors, spirits and elders, past, present and emerging. They hold the memories, traditions, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal Australia. We must always see to it that in our discussions in this council, we recognise the unique place in and role of our First Nations people in the formation of this country. And we must also ensure that with respect to our Indigenous fellow citizens, we observe the principles of respect and consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Santa. We have two applications to attend this evening's meeting remotely from Councillor Lepouris and Councillor Spenceley. And that is moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Mutton. All those in favour, and that is carried. Welcome at the moment, Councillor Lepouris. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Welsh.
Yes, I have a significant interest in 10.8 and I'll leave the room.
Okay, 10.8 is. Thank you, Councillor Lepouris.
Yes, 10.3. I'll be excusing myself from that.
10.3, the social media policy?
Sorry, no, not 10.3.
10.8?
10.8, yes, the Primrose Park.
Thank you. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll declare a significant interest in 10.8 as well.
Thank you. This meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Those present should refrain from making defamatory statements. By attending the meeting, you are giving consent to your image and voice being webcast. Councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during meetings of the council. Councillors who need to use their phone to text, talk or engage in social media activity must leave the chamber to do so. That brings us to the confirmation of the minutes. Is there a mover? Councillor Santa, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Put the item, all those in favour? And that is carried. Councillors, there are no speakers registered for the public forum on any items this evening, so we will go through the agenda. Item 9.1, all of which have been brought forward by Councillor Gibson. 9.1, traffic committee minutes. Councillor Berrigan, moved by Councillor Berrigan, seconded by Councillor Welsh. Any discussion?
Can I just, someone rang me this afternoon asking why there wasn't a meeting in July. A traffic meeting.
Through Madam Mayor, I would expect that there would be no items for the agenda if there was a meeting in July.
Okay.
Thank you. I put the item, all those in favour and those against, that is carried. Matters outstanding to 24 June 2024. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Berrigan, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Councillor Gibson, you have some questions.
Yes, I do have some questions. Now, if we go to page 5 of 7, page 5 of 7, and it's the second last item, 8.4. So this is about the council joining Kylie Tink, MP Kylie Tink, in her concert, Stand Up and Rock Out youth-led climate action concert. If we go over to the right-hand side, I just read with interest that this event has been rescheduled from 19th of March to the 28th of July, and that a request had been received to extend insurance to cover Kylie Tink Independence volunteers. I can't agree with that at all. I'm sorry. Since when do our ratepayers pay for pay for a MP's insurance to cover their volunteers at an event. I can't agree with that, that at all, Mayor. Can I hear a bit more about it? Who thought this was a good idea, and why didn't we discuss this in council? Because I certainly can't agree with it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll put the question to the Director of Corporate.
I'm just waiting. I don't think it was rescheduled from the 19th of March. It was rescheduled from the 19th of May.
It says 19.
I understand that, Councillor Gibson, but if you actually look at column 2, it says it was to be held on Sunday, the 19th of May.
I'm just reading.
Thank you, councillor.
Yeah, you-
I'll put the question to.
Yeah, I'm just reading straight from
Thank you.
the page that I'm.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it was rescheduled due to conflicts of scheduling around the Oval in St Leonard's Park that weekend. And the original request was to co-fund the insurance for the event. This is just breaking down the different components of the insurance that's requested, which is public liability as well as insurance for the volunteers, which is in line with a standard event protocol.
But it says here, well, I can't put, that's another question. It says here, I'm just reading straight from this. A request has been received to extend insurance to cover Kylie Tink's independence volunteers. And our events team are liaising with insurers to confirm options. How can we possibly, she should be insuring her own volunteers. Well, we shouldn't cut.
Thank you, councillor Gibson. The correct question's been asked. Allow it to be answered.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's standard practice with events, and they have requested we cover their volunteers through our event insurance, which we already own. There is no additional cost to council. We're just currently liaising to get administration organised for that.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, there's no cost to us. It's just part of the process you usually follow.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct in this instance.
But why doesn't she insure her own workers?
Well, I'm going to, the original resolution anticipated the council would contribute towards the insurance. That was a resolution of council and it's been carried out by council staff. So do you have any other questions on the matters outstanding?
No, I'll just vote against it on that point.
Thank you. Are there, councillor Burton?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, a question regarding a matter around establishing a report into a citizen jury for advertising in public advertising in our LGA. We supported a motion or resolution that said we would have a report to council in June on that matter, and I haven't seen the report either in the June or the July agenda, and so I'm just wondering, and I haven't had any communication regarding that, so I'm just wondering through you, Mayor, to the CEO or relevant director, is there an update on that? I also can't see it on the matters outstanding, although I may have missed it. Could I please have an update on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I understand that the update will be provided, the report will be provided in August.
Thank you, CEO. Is there a reason why it wasn't provided in June as per the resolution? And would we normally advise councillors with an update if that was not to be provided as per the resolution?
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically where council resolutions specify a date, it really does depend on resources as to when reports can be forthcoming. So it is a little bit problematic when there are resolutions that actually specify a date because it doesn't take into consideration other workloads. The report that's provided each month or each council month in relation to status updates, there should be a status update in relation to that one. I'm not sure, I haven't had a chance just now to scan through it, but there should be an update each meeting.
Thank you, CEO, and Mayor, through you again to the CEO. What's the cutoff date for council being able to make decisions in this term?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it depends on the decision that you're making. So in regards to policy, strategy, major decisions, then that would be the cut-off. The last council meeting would be the first council meeting in August. So the second council meeting in August would be for the minor decision making and or information reports.
Thank you, CEO. Through you again, Mayor. What category does this decision fall into? Major or minor?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that would depend on the recommendation. I'm not sure if the Director of Planning wishes to comment.
Excuse me, through you, Madam Mayor, that report will come up to the next council meeting, so it gives a little buffer between the caretaker period. So it's kind of an academic question, really. But any decision that the council commits the future council financially or in terms of other commitments is where it gets difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion and a seconder. I put the item. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. That brings us to investment loan borrowings report as at 30th of June, item 10.2. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Berge, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Is there any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Item 10.3, social media policy. Is there a mover?
I have a motion there.
A motion from Councillor Gibson.
That this be deferred to the beginning of the new council. I don't know, this report, I like to read all my reports again thoroughly right before the meeting. And if you wade right into this, it's quite extraordinary. I have to say, when this council that prides itself on freedom of speech is trying to absolutely control councillors on social media. This sort of thing should be, and my motion is that this be deferred to the.
Second the motion.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Bird. This is something for a new council, and if you just read through the timelines in here, it's being rushed. So we're giving 28 days notice. And then within 7 days, someone has to notify the CEO if they are actually an administrator of a social media group. Now, I've never seen anything this rushed. So, so if you look at there, so just look on page 9 of 18. Other social media platforms administered by councillors. As everyone knows, I do administer a social media platform. So the cynic in me says that this report has been put on the council agenda to control the way I administer a local social media platform, which I've been administering for I don't know, 7, 8 years now. And all of a sudden this comes up. I'd like councillors all to go to page 9 of 18 and read the bit in the middle. As other social media platforms administered by councillors. And I want to know how this is very I read this and I thought, my goodness, this is something, that you get a council in, no, they don't have councils in North Korea, but it's right more North Korea than North Sydney Council. It's very restrictive, it's very onerous, and I want to know how you would how council would actually administer this. There's some, I think everyone should sit here and read this because it's quite extraordinary. And it's quite an extraordinary attack on freedom of speech here. And really, this should be something that needs to be developed by the new council, not this council, not right before an election. Councillors, you know, our residents don't like this sort of, our residents just do not like this sort of a council trying to control their councillors in this manner. And I would urge you all to just put this off, and this is a matter for the new council, who might be more determined that councillors have freedom of speech outside of this chamber than this council does. So I urge you to vote for that. I think it's a reasonable way forward, councillors.
I have an amendment.
Thank you, councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation with an exhibition period of 45 days.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor.
And could I just ask you to take on something else? If I'm going to vote against it, but would you
Well,
take
then I'm
on?
happy just to speak.
Just hold on. The councillor Gibson is asking for a further amendment.
Okay, I'm looking here in the middle, again, page 9 of 18. I will be voting against it, but you know, seeing as it's moved by councillor Berry, I can see.
Okay,
But- No, I'm just-
put the addition that you're asking
Okay,
for.
if we just look in the middle of page 9, so a councillor must advise the chief executive officer of any social media platforms they administer.
So
Councillor must
could
do so within
you
7 days.
articulate what
Yeah.
is it that you want?
Well, that should
To
be
be
made,
taken
that
on.
should be made 30 days. Everything else that we have, you've got about 30 days. that
Thank
needs
you.
to- So I think that
Thank
should
you.
be 30
Thank you,
days
councillor
and 30
Gibson.
days.
Again, councillor Berry, did you take that on board?
No, I don't.
Thank
You
you.
don't?
No.
And the reason I don't take it on board is that we're putting it out on public exhibition. This is not adopting the social media policy. This is to put it out there for consideration, and then a report will come back. And whilst I take on board councillor Gibson's comment, if it's out for exhibition for 45 days and then comes back to council, it won't be reported back until the new council, by the time it goes through the process of the council staff having assessed all of the submissions. As I said, it's a draft policy. It is in the absolute spirit of transparency and everything to put these things out unedited. This is the report from a council officer. It goes out on exhibition to our community for their comment, and then we can come back and debate the issues that you might like to raise there, councillor Gibson. I have absolutely no problems with having a social media policy. I think in this day and age where we have seen defamation actions against people in social media, which has been used for political purposes, I think it is the right way to move, that there is a policy. And I have no interest in administering a Facebook page or whatever, but if you do, it doesn't stop you from doing it. It just requires you to adhere to the code of conduct, which we have to do in the course of our roles anyway.
But I'd like to speak against that amendment,
Just-
although I know it's councillor Berg's as well.
Councillor Gibson, could you turn off your microphone?
Okay, I've just got my light on.
I
because I want to speak.
can see you want to speak. I'm chairing the meeting, so leave it on and close your mouth. Thank
Oh,
you,
excuse
councillor.
me, Madam Mayor. Do not speak to me like that in a meeting. Could you
I
apologise?
will withdraw and apologise, but I
Thank
will
you.
once again draw
not
you
speak to
the
me like
entirety of this term. You have ignored the fact
Do not
that
speak
when the
to me
chair
in a
is
rude
speaking,
voice.
you are to cease speaking.
Do not,
That is what
do
the
not
code
tell
of
me to
ethics
shut my
requires.
mouth.
I didn't say shut your mouth.
You did so. My grandchildren
Councillor-
wouldn't be that
Councillor
rude.
Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, thank you to our staff for putting together a social media policy. It's absolutely critical that we have a social media policy, in my view. I have some concerns, however, about the policy that in particular in relation to how it deals with councillors and relates to councillors. I think the staff aspect is very good and very standard. But insofar as how it deals with councillors, I have some concerns. I think there are far-reaching implications of this, including some areas that are open to interpretation, such as your social media becoming the property of the council, and you needing to provide that to the council. So some of these things just need to be, I think, talked through in a fairly transparent way before we put it out and endorse something that could be interpreted as being endorsed by council. I think that we should have a briefing on it where we can talk through some of our questions and concerns. So I do support the motion from councillor Gibson, for different reasons that the motion went up, I think, in large part, but I do think we should be having a Q&A session on something as far-reaching as this and administratively burdensome for not well-resourced councillors like this. This could potentially cause a huge administrative burden for councillors. So it just needs to be talked through rather than give the impression that we are endorsing it. I'd certainly think that a briefing would be a good step.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
No, I'll just love you to.
You can both speak to the amendment, and I would say your right of reply to the original motion
Yeah, thank you.
simultaneously.
Thank you, Mayor. As I say, this is, I think this is pretty simple. Why would we do something like this right before an election? We haven't had a social media policy for this whole term of council. Why would we do this right now? I think it makes our residents suspicious that this is political interference, and I have to agree with councillor Burke. Some of these are really stringent. Councillors must identify themselves on their social media platforms in the following format: councillor, and then your first name and last name. A councillor's social media platform must include a profile photo, which is a clearly identifiable image of the councillor. Councillor's social media platforms must specify or provide a clearly accessible link to the House rules for engaging on the platform. They must say the views expressed and comments made on this social media platform are my own and not those of council. Councillors, don't be fooled into rushing this. This is something that we need to do. All those councillors that are seeking re-election get re-elected, or the new councillors, leave this for the new councillors to deal with. Asking that someone report to the CEO within 7 days of becoming a councillor or 7 days of becoming an administrator. And I just want to know how this is going to be monitored. How are the staff actually going to deal with this? Because it says if an administrator who is also a councillor deletes a comment on the social media page, that a photograph has to be taken of that comment, from what I'm understanding here, given to council. So an administrator has to justify why they're deleting comments. I mean, I just can't see how this would even be monitored. I think it will lead to just another round of code of conduct complaints. And, you know, there's been, look, I have broad shoulders. I've had so many code of conduct complaints made against me. I don't think any of them have actually been successful, but, you know, I used to get about once a week. This would just lead to a whole lot of complaints to the Office of Local Government and to the Mayor and the General Manager. And I don't think it's a great way to start a new council. I think my motion is reasonable, and I would ask that all of those councillors in this room that value freedom of speech vote for my motion, please.
Thank you. If you could turn up your microphone. I put the amendment, which is that the social media policy go on exhibition for a period of 45 days and be reported back to the next council. All those in favour? Those against? That's split. I'm going to use my casting vote to go to public consultation. The amendment becomes the motion. I put the motion. All those in favour? And those against? I'm using my casting vote to put it to the community. And that brings us to item 10.4, draft amendment to North Sydney DCP for the Rangers Road and Military Road Woolworths site. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Moved by councillor Berrigan. Is there a seconder? seconded by councillor Santa. Is there any discussion? I put the item, all those in favour? And those against, that is carried. And that brings us to New Year's Eve access arrangements for Falls Head Reserve, item 10.5.
I have a motion, Mayor.
Yes, councillor
Yeah,
Gibson.
yes, I'd like to move the recommendation here. I think this is as opposed to the social policy, social media policy. I think this is an excellent report. And I note the author is someone with great experience in our bushland management.
Before you continue to speak, could I have a seconder? Seconded by councillor Berge. You have the floor, councillor Gibson.
Yes, so look at our author, Gareth Debney, someone who has so much experience in bushland management, and not only experience, Mr. Debney has enormous love, I think, for our natural spaces. And I think, you know, it's a bit of a tricky one because we are denying residents and visitors a place to see the fireworks. But on the other hand, we just can't have our bushland trashed, and that's what's happening. You know, you can ask people to be careful. You can sort of, you know, think that they're going to respect our bushland. But on New Year's Eve, all sorts of common sense often goes out the window, and behaviour is not always appropriate. And we really can't afford the trashing of this beautiful public space called Falls Head Reserve. So I endorse this recommendation wholeheartedly and hope that everyone else does too.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Berge.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, likewise. And I just want to thank our bush care workers for their fantastic effort. We received some really good feedback from them as well. An important part of our community who do a lot of work there. As I say, we must put our environment first. That underpins everything that we have. So I support the motion.
Are there any other speakers? I put the item, all those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Brings us to 10.6, season extension for winter sport. Is there a mover? Councillor Berge, is it seconded by councillor Lamb? Is there any discussion? I put the item, all those in favour? And those against? That is carried. 10.7, the Sydney Library of Things, renewal of the lease at the coal loader. Is there a mover? Councillor Lamb, seconded by councillor Burke. Is there any discussion? I put the item.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I want to just publicly thank all of our volunteers. The Sydney Library of Things is a fantastic part of what should be a growing circular economy where we don't need to buy stuff, we can borrow, reuse. And I want to acknowledge the team there, led by Carol, who also run the Fix It Hub. Some of you will recall that I moved a motion some time ago establishing a repair cafe. Well, this is the team that stepped up to establish that cafe, Fix It Hub. And I'm very pleased to advise that I do volunteer on the front desk there most months. And we are very busy doing a lot of repair work in the community for clothes, for electrical items, etc. And the team does a great job. I've been advised that we're so busy they'd like to move to a fortnightly repair cafe, and I'll be supporting them where I can to do that. And I support the motion.
Are there any other speakers? I put the item, all those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Item 10.8, councillors Lapouris, Welsh and Berge will be departing the chamber and returning to the waiting room. Thank you. This is item 10.8, tender 22 of 2023, the lease of Primrose Park tennis courts. Is there a mover for the recommendation?
Well, Mayor, I just wanted to ask some questions about the highest ranked tenderer. Do we have to close the meeting for me to do that?
Depends on the nature of your questions. Do you
Um,
think you
oh,
can?
No, I want to know,
In which case I'll defer this matter to the end of the meeting. And we'll
yeah, I
close.
just want to, I want to,
I'll move that we defer item 10.8 to the close of the meeting so that we can
I'll
go
second
into
that.
closed session, seconded by councillor Gibson. All those in favour? And that is carried. If we could ask councillor LaForest and the other councillors to return. Okay. We've given him a little time and I'm sure he will join us shortly. We'll move on to item 10.9, the loan funding for the North Sydney Olympic Pool Project. Is there a mover? Councillor Berrigan, seconded by councillor Santa. Is there any discussion? I put the item,
Yeah,
all those
I
in
just want to
favour.
say I will be, I will.
You can
make-
just vote against it.
No, I want to publicly say that I'm voting against.
Well, if
this.
your vote will be recorded. Thank you. All those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. Item 10.10, North Sydney Olympic Pool Aqua Dining Tenancy Fit Out. Councillor
May I have the
Berrigan.
motion?
Yep.
And the motion is that council defer consideration of the North Sydney Olympic Pool Aqua Dining tenancy fit out pending further advice in relation to design changes.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Lamb, thank you.
Can I just ask a question first before I vote? How much would this delay the ability of the proprietor to open the restaurant or get on with the refurbishment works he obviously needs to do to get the restaurant up and running?
I don't believe that there'll be a delay in relation to opening, in line with opening of the
Oh,
pool.
good. And if could I ask if there is a delay, could that be if it's going to cause further delays, could that be reported back to council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, through the monthly updates.
Good. Does that need to be in the motion or? Okay.
Thank you. That we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any further discussion? I put the item for deferral. All those in favour? And those against, that's carried. That takes us to item 10.11, North Sydney Olympic Pool Redevelopment Project Update. Is there a mover? Councillor Lamb, seconded by councillor Santa. Is there any discussion?
Again, I just want to state very clearly for the record that I will be voting no on this one.
Thank you.
No, I'm still speaking.
So you're speaking against the recommendation?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am speaking against the recommendation. I have to say as a councillor, I've lost confidence in this council led by Mayor Baker to open this pool. And I think it's almost at a stage where this should be referred off to the Minister for Local Government. I won't bother moving that way because I don't believe I'll have the numbers to do that. But I think it's one thing everyone just stops me in the street and says, when is the pool going to be open? And all I see is delay after delay and budget blowout after budget blowout. And as I say, I think it's got to the stage where the Minister should take control, the Minister for Local Government and the Office of Local Government should take control of this project.
And we have a mover and a seconder. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. That brings us to item 10.12, the North Sydney Olympic Pool Redevelopment Project Design Services Contract.
I have a motion there.
Yes.
Well, I want to move that we don't continue with, I'm just trying to work out how I do this.
Oh, councillor Gibson, could I suggest, seeing that we've already deferred another item for closed session, if you're having difficulty, given that this relates to legal professional privilege?
Yeah, no, I
Should
just
we
want to, I want to
defer-
put forward a motion that we do not proceed with legal proceedings. Actually, I'll just put that motion forward.
Is there a seconder for
Yeah,
that?
I'm going to say.
Just wait, is there a seconder for councillor Gibson's?
The
Councillor
council
Lepore.
resolves, the
Thank you.
council resolves not to commence legal proceedings against Brewster Fourth Proprietary Limited as outlined within the confidential advice attached to this report. And should I speak to my motion?
Yes, and I'll remind you that if you do need to,
Yeah,
we will
thank you,
go
Mayor.
into closed session.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I will be very careful with my choice of words. But councillors, as I say, when I'm out and about in my community, I just have members of the community saying, when can I get back to swimming at the pool? You know, when can I do my laps? When can I get back to aqua aerobics? When will the gym be open? They simply want this project finished. I don't see how starting a round of legal proceedings is going to speed up this redevelopment process by even 1 day or 1 hour. In fact, I have a feeling we will do the opposite. What we need is goodwill from all the parties involved to finish this project off and open it to the public. I don't see how starting legal action, when you go down this road, you know, the risks are great. Yeah, we might win and it might benefit our ratepayers. We also could lose. You know, it's a gamble. It's a toss on the roulette wheel. It's a gamble, and I'm not going to gamble with ratepayers' money. I don't think legal action. It's just I don't think legal action is going to help here, councillors. We just need all the parties to work together in agreement and finish the pool. How will this help that happen? I'm sure it's going to delay the project further. Just think about it before you vote, councillors. We are going to cause more bad will between the parties involved. We're also going to run the risk of paying hefty amounts legal fees. This will take years to resolve probably. It's not going to be a quick decision. And how is it helpful? That's the question. I just want the pool open. I think this also gives the impression that this council thinks that we've made no bad decisions, that we've been, you know, that since this council started on the 10th of January 2022, that we have handled this project perfectly and it's all someone else's fault. Well, I don't believe that's true, councillors, and we can't, it's almost like a diversionary tactic. That's how I see it, and this is strictly my opinion, that this is a diversionary tactic to again try to make it look like, you know, it's all someone else's fault. We've got to be grown-ups. This council needs to just recognise that our residents want the pool open. They don't want to play any more political games, and I'm sure they don't want to throw any more money at lawyers and barristers. I just think this council is now developing a reputation to take legal action. Our expenditure on legal matters is soaring since the last council, and that is an absolute fact. And I don't feel comfortable about it. I am not going to spend ratepayers' money on legal action when it will not help the main cause, which is simply to get the pool open.
Thank you, councillor Merrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to foreshadow, I'll be voting against the motion and I'd like to foreshadow that I'll be moving the recommendation.
Thank you, councillor Burke. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, ma'am. Look, I just need to say that some of the language there from councillor Gibson was wildly inaccurate. For example, that we're spinning the roulette wheel. We're getting the best possible advice on this issue. There's no spinning of the roulette wheel happening. And it's totally unrelated to the date of the pool opening.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I have absolutely no doubt that if we went down to the pool and had the architects there and had Icon there and were prepared to give them whatever they asked for, the pool could be finished very quickly. But that would be to completely ignore the realities of us managing the finances of council and managing the finances of the pool. So I don't support councillor Gibson's motion. I have another concern. We do have advice being considered tonight that requires us to take a decision before the 1st of August. And I am taken by surprise to think that the issue, the subject of the advice, the subject of the decision, could not have been briefed months ago. So it's the shortness of time. And I have another issue. We are relying on the advice of our solicitors.
Could I just ask you to be really careful?
Yeah, I'm super careful. We are relying on the advice of our solicitors. Now, I don't say that that's right or wrong, but in an issue of this magnitude, I would have hoped that we would have before us.
I think you need to be really careful, and if you want to speak in this vein, then we may need to resolve to go into closed session.
Can I hold then and go into confidential session on what I'm about to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, do I have a mover to
I moved that we defer this to closed session.
which we probably should do now because we're in the middle of the debate.
Yeah.
So there's a mover that we move into closed session. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lamb, all those in favour?
No, I'm voting against that, Mayor.
Well, thank you. That's carried. So we will now close the meeting so that we can discuss more openly the legal professional privilege advice. Yeah, so the gallery. Sorry. It's, we voted. Yeah. Sorry, Luke, close the door of the gallery's been cleared. So that Councillor Spenceley and McPherson. We've reopened the meeting, having considered items 10.8 and 10.12. In relation to item 10.8, Council resolved that Council accept the tender of the highest ranked tenderer, that Council resolved to enter into a 5-year lease with a further 5-year option, that Council notes and implements the recommendations outlined in the confidential attachment, which is to form part of the lease agreement. 4, that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to take any necessary action to implement the decision, including entering into associated contracts. 5, that Council resolves that the identified attachment to this report is to be treated as confidential in accordance with section 11.3 of the Local Government Act for the following reason: under section 10A2 of the Local Government Act, C, information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the Council is conducting or proposes to conduct business. It is further noted the release of this information would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest, as publication of all tendered documents would discourage potential tenderers from submitting commercial information in future and would affect Council's ability to obtain value for money services. In relation to item 10.12, the published recommendation was resolved, which recommended that Council resolves that the identified attachment to this report is to be treated as confidential in accordance with section 11(3) of the Local Government Act for the following reason under section 10 capital A2 of the Local Government Act. G, advice concerning litigation or advice that would otherwise be privileged from production in legal proceedings on the ground of legal professional privilege. It is further noted that release of this information would be on balance contrary to the public interest, as it would affect Council's ability to manage legal matters effectively and in the best interest of the community. 2, the Council note the contents of this report and the confidential advice attached herein in relation to the agreement between Council and Brewster Hjorth Proprietary Limited, trading as Brewster Hjorth Architects VHA, for design services related to the redevelopment of North Sydney Olympic Pool. 3, that Council authorise the Chief Executive Officer to instruct Council's legal representative Spark Helmore to commence legal proceedings against Brewster Hjorth Proprietary Limited, trading as Brewster Hjorth Architects BHA, as outlined within the confidential advice attached to this report. That brings us, councillors, to the last 2 items on the agenda, which are notices of motion. The first is item 11.1, Councillor Santa. Your motion, if you would care to move it.
Madam Mayor, if I may also place an amendment to that. Point 5. Recommend the motion as that this report be included in the Council's overall economic development strategy.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Burke. Councillor Santa, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Mayor. In a previous professional life, I had some experience in marketing and tourism overseas. The then Australian Tourist Commission, now called Tourism Australia. I berate myself for my lack of inclusion of North Sydney in the tour packages I helped develop during my time at the Australian Tourist Commission. Yet there's a vast array of existing and potential tourism sites and activities here, including the best harbour views in Sydney, beautiful harbourside parks in Balls Head Bay, Berries Bay, Lavender Bay, Milson, Anderson, Primrose, Carrada and Smoothie Park, and Flat Rock Creek, containing rare coastal rainforests and gopherus and mangroves. How many people know, for example, that in 1928, Charles Kingsford Smith took off from Anderson Park on the epic first ever manned flight across the Tasman to New Zealand? We also have First Nations petroglyphs and mittens, including the fascinating carving of a human figure inside a whale right by the buildings in the coal loader. And the dating that I've seen is that goes back 6,000 years, at the same time as the pyramids were being built in Egypt. We have interesting settler history for both domestic and international visitors, such as the origin of the naming of Neutral Bay, the French would love that story, and the home of May Gibbs at Nutcote. Charming restaurants and coffee shops with a European ambiance in Kirribilli, Neutral Bay and Crow's Nest, and harbourside icons like Luna Park, the coal loader, and yes, the pool. And there is the opportunity to develop more visitor sites, such as Berries Bay, the High Line, and my pet project, a rooftop park over the Warringah Freeway between Ernest and West Streets, connecting Camaray Park, Anzac, and St Leonard's Park. Yet we have what must be one of the last remaining 9 to 5 Monday to Friday CBDs in Australia. Now, we can compare that with the Sydney CBD, which a few years ago, when I was much younger, had bugger all going for it, excuse my French, in the after hours. But now look at it, it is a thriving, dynamic Sydney centre, and it's a model for us. We need a CBD with a thriving day and nighttime economy like Sydney City has developed over the last 10 or so years. As a 30-year resident living close to the CBD of North Sydney, I've often wondered why none of the architects who designed the towers in our CBD thought to include in their designs a dedicated lift system to take tourists and diners to a rooftop terrace rather than putting in microwave dishes and air conditioning equipment, so that tourists and diners could take advantage of the finest view of the finest harbour in the world. If they can do it in Singapore with the Infinity Building, in New York with the Empire State Building, Paris with the Eiffel Tower, and London with the Gherkin, why not in North Sydney? When I mentioned this little tourism fixation of mine with some colleagues, they've said, Godfrey, yeah, all well, but good maybe for the growth of business. But while we recognise that council's role is to foster social welfare, what's in such a project for council's bottom line? Well, I've attended 2 of these local government of New South Wales sponsored tourism conferences, one of which I've reported on here. And both of the host councils, Orange and Wagga Wagga, as well as other council attendees, have assured me that their revenues have greatly increased in such areas as increased rate revenues and direct payments from tourism operators as a result of council support for the establishment of a local tourism industry. I've also met with the managing directors of Tourism Australia, Philippa Harrison, who I know personally, and Destination New South Wales, Steve Cox, who agree that North Sydney shows great potential for the development of tourism product here. Destination New South Wales, the state government organisation, one of whose key roles is to help in the establishment of new tourism product, has offered to visit council and provide a detailed briefing on the necessary steps to establish this industry here and help us in the process. I commend this offer to my council and staff colleagues and urge you to take advantage of this exciting opportunity for North Sydney. I also recommend this report be included in the council's overall economic development strategy, sorry.
Thank you. Are there any, Councillor Gibson?
Yes, thanks, councillor Sandra. I've put forward motions like this many times, and I think it's always good to do it again. Our CBD is getting better. We do have some good restaurants there now, I think, which is helping. And I think I do believe our CBD will start to liven up. I think the metro is going to be amazing for nightlife in our CBD. People will, because parking is very difficult in our CBD in the night time. You actually have to park in a metered parking spot, which deters some local residents coming in and going to restaurants here. So I think the metro will have a big impact. I also think the build to rent development down at the MLC Centre will also have a huge impact on our nightlife in North Sydney. I was all for that build to rent project, and I believe it is going ahead. So we're going to have a lot of people living living there, living where the existing MLC building is. Where you've got people living, you've got people popping out for a drink, popping out for a meal, and staying around after work. So I think all of those things are really good omens for our CBD and the livening up of our CBD, and anything we can do to hasten that that process, I think is very very timely, and I thank you for bringing it forward again, Councillor Sandra.
Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item, all those in favour. And those against, that is carried. That brings us to the final item on the agenda. Councillor Gibson, your motion.
Yes,
I would move it, and you'll have a seconder.
Yeah, I'll move the motion.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
Councillor Martin.
Where is it? Oh,
Councillor Lapouris. Thank you.
Councillor Martin. Okay,
I'll
look,
second to bring it before the discussion.
this is not terribly controversial, and for council that has constantly committed to open process and transparency, I'm sure that this will actually have the support of my fellow councillors. On the 10th of January 2022, we had a choice of candidates that had been put forward. We had 2 mayoral nominees. Now, at that meeting, I didn't know how I was going to vote. And I wanted to hear from both candidates. I wanted them to present their vision for being mayor and what their mayoralty would mean. I also wanted the ability to ask some questions. And I think, you know, I think we didn't do that at that last election, but I really believe we should. We've got to make sure that we're voting the right way. You've got to, you know, all of these discussions about who's going to be the best mayor and what the policies are shouldn't happen in private meetings behind closed doors. They should actually happen in the public forum. You want to be mayor of a council like North Sydney, you need to be able to stand up and address the councillors and address all of the members who are sitting in the gallery and put forward your case. I know I have a grandchild going for school captain and house captain soon. And, you know, in that process, if you know, it's scary, but if they want to have that, if they want that role and they want to get the badge that goes with it and the glory that goes with it, they've actually got to get up and they've got to address the assembly. They can't just go around in the playground and try to gather votes. So I think this would be a real improvement in our democratic processes. And I hope the mayor supports this one, because I think it's a good motion that would have the support of our community members. And you know, I'm not here suggesting that we insist that mayoral candidates speak, but if they want to speak, let's provide them a forum to speak. And as I say, I hardly think this is controversial. And I'd be looking forward to the support of our current mayor on this one and my fellow councillors. Open, transparent government, that's what we all promised to deliver. Thank you, councillors.
Councillor Vogt.
Thank you, ma'am. May I ask a question of the CEO, please, through you, Mayor? Is there an opportunity for the new council to determine whether or not they can do this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically the mayoral election is the first item on the agenda for a new council. So the guidelines provide the conduct as to how that election is to be carried out. So it would be unusual for a decision to be made before a mayor is elected.
Councillor Martin.
Mayor, thank you. I support this motion because it tells the new councillors who arrive on day one and had no real idea of the procedures that we will follow. It tells them how we're going to select or how they're going to select a mayor at their first meeting. So it lays the ground rules out rather than leaving it for everyone to try to work it out on the day. So this gives certainty of process. And that's what I find incredibly attractive about the motion. I support it.
Are there any other speakers? Before I give Councillor Gibson the right of reply, I won't be supporting this. And the reason I won't is it fetters the next council. It is open to the council at their first meeting. There are guidelines about the conduct of elections, but if they wish to ask questions, the code of meeting practice still applies. And I think that it ought to be not being told by the former council what the newly elected council ought to be doing. I think, well, it is. It's setting out exactly what they will have to do. And on that basis, I think we should leave it to the new council to set their own path and make their own way. And any other speakers? Otherwise, you have the right.
I found that very interesting there, because that's what I tried to do at this council on the 10th of January 2022. I tried to introduce that, and I was told absolutely point blank that there was no way to make that happen because it wasn't on the agenda. So I think what you're saying, is simply not correct. There's no forum at the first meeting. You haven't.
I'm going to correct you. I am correct because the Code of Meeting Practice applies to all meetings of council, and there are specific provisions about questions between councillors. So I'll allow you to continue.
But if we can elect to have on the agenda for the first meeting, this opportunity. If the new council, doesn't want to take up the option, well, I guess they can vote against it. But the opportunity should be there, Mayor. Let's just have it on the agenda. All of those who want to put their hand up to be mayor of this great municipality can then decide if they want to speak and take questions or not. This is, read it carefully again, councillors. This is not forcing anyone to take action they don't want to do. It's just providing a forum for that to be able to happen. And it's not easy to do it at the first meeting of the new council, because I wanted to do it on the 10th of January 2022, and no one was able to say that we could do it. So let's vote to.
Sorry, I'm just going to correct you there. That wasn't true. You moved it and it was defeated by vote.
I don't think
There's a minute of the meeting, but in any
Oh,
event.
so your assistant mayor has
Again,
searched
I'm
it
going
up.
to ask you again.
Well, that's what your assistant mayor
No,
does, Mayor.
councillor
look,
Gibson,
and
I'm
these are all
calling
the
you to
things-
order again
Okay,
with your
okay, well, I'm
personal
still-
attacks
All right,
instead
I
of
still have
policy.
my right of reply. I'm still speaking to my right of reply. And they're the sort of things that I would have liked to have asked on the 10th of January. I would have liked to, the questions that I wanted to ask was, how will you, I wanted to ask these questions of both candidates. It was Councillor Mutton and Councillor Baker. And I want to say, how will you prioritise completing the redevelopment of the North Sydney pool? I want to say, how do you see yourself working with the current general manager? And I wanted to ask, will you be a full-time mayor? I wanted to ask those questions before I voted, or I wanted to hear from the nominee. And I think that motion was, if I did put forward that motion and it was defeated, then that is incredibly sad. But councillors around this room, you don't have to repeat that mistake. You have an opportunity to vote your own way. Nobody has to vote in a block. You can vote your own way on this one. And if you honestly believe in open, transparent government, you will vote yes to this notice of motion. Thank you, councillors.
I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? It is lost. And that brings us to the close of the meeting. Thank you all for your participation.
Recording stopped.